today with Miss Wendy, we'll combine our presentation. Normally this is going to be a workshop that we'll start off with unpacking standards. I'm sure everybody here probably already knows how to do that, is very familiar with it. And then going on to center-based instruction, which is pretty much what we use every day in elementary at St. Paul Clark for many reasons, which Miss Wendy will go on later. And then we'll do a STEAM activity altogether, just so we can switch it up a bit. So I'm George. I've been teaching since 2007. I started off doing ESL and then ended up sticking with elementary. I did high school for 2 years and I thought, I'll just go back to elementary. It's a lot more fun. Not dealing with the hormones and all the big kid issues. I'd rather deal with like kids fighting over a Lego piece than anything. So unpacking standards. Essentially at, I guess all of us in all the St. Paul schools, we follow standards. And the main thing is when you see a standard, you have your 20 standards and you say, okay, this year I've got to get all these standards, check them off and make sure the kids, I get these standards done and the kids understand them. So what I use, and then some other people I'm sure use, is UBD, or I use the 6 Facets of Understanding, which a handout should be going out. Did we get that printed out? So then, which you guys can take a look at. I'll also have it up here. And pretty much what all this is when you see a standard, which I have an example here, this is a math standard. And on top, it's CCSS, math content 2, blah, blah, blah. So what that pretty much means is it's a grade 2 math standard. And it says measuring to determine how much longer one object is than another, comparing the lengths. So that's the standard. And then using this system here to ensure that the kid has understood it. So the big idea pretty much is selling it to the kids, because the kids, like, I don't know if you remember when you were in elementary, I do. I was always like, why am I learning this? I don't even need this. What's the point? Especially in math, kids don't get it. They're like, this is completely useless, it's boring. So if you can sell them on why it's important to them, how they can use it, pitch it to them, then you've got their attention and your success is already, you have a greater chance of success in teaching the kids. So you start off with enduring understandings, or we call these also learning objectives. So starting off with your standard, you'll come up with 3 questions that at the end of this, what they should be able to do. And then these are, you can take any standard and you can make these yourself before preparing your lesson plan. And this is essential questions. So these are essentially what I was talking about before. These are what you need to tell the kids, like, can I use it now? If they can, then they'll listen to you more. Am I ever going to need this in my life? If you're going to show them how it's used in real life, then they'll be more interested. They'll say, yeah, I want to be able to do that. Because the kids always want to be able to do big kid things, right? And then this is the handout that will be going out, or it should be. It's on the way, I guess. So using this is, I guess everybody knows Bloom's taxonomy. This is another thing called the 6 Facets of Learning. And these guys came up with this system where if you can put a question for each one of these categories, if a kid can explain it, interpret it, apply it, have a perspective, another person's perspective, empathize with it, and have self-knowledge, and they can do all these, and essentially they have understood the standard. They know it. They've got it. And you can actually base your assessments on these skills. So I actually take the standard and I'll write a question for each one of these based on the standard, and then I can go further on and build my lesson plan based on this. And then further on you can see the second handout that I've given you. I will actually begin doing a 1-week study on the standard, doing learning objectives, which are my 3 enduring questions, a task, and then conditions, and start building my lesson plan. There's more. I can actually build an assessment on this, and then I can use this every year and keep it on my Google Docs or in my folder. And I've built up my lesson plan using UBD, or Understanding by Design, based on a standard. So that's pretty much how I do it. I can do it in my head now. I've done it so much, so I can actually, standard I've done like for the 4 years in a row, I can actually just use this. And I would go straight to my 6 Facets of Learning, and I can even put those on the wall, or I can make a learning object or a poster. I can have the kids make a poster on that. They can be a part of the lesson planning. They can actually come up with the questions themselves if they're, grade 3 and up. And that's essentially how I do mine. And then I guess that took, okay, sorry. I guess that's essentially the first part. The second part is doing centers, which Miss Wendy will do. And actually what we do is we do this part first. It takes a little bit longer because you actually build the lesson in this workshop, but now we're just talking about it. Then you can actually do centers based on these standards, and then Wendy will show you how we do centers in Clark. Need help? Or?
I teach first grade at St. Paul and Clark, and I've mostly taught kindergarten and first grade for many years. I've done up to third grade, but KN1 is my happy place. So I've been using centers for a lot of years, and I'm always surprised when people say, oh yeah, I tried centers once, and yeah, it didn't go so well. And I try to explain to them, it's something that you really have to work on, and it takes time, and it's okay to start slow and build. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we do it and how I support other teachers doing that at our school. I really like this quote because it kind of conceptualizes why I love teaching this way. It says, you don't understand anything until you learn it more than one way. So when we're learning something in elementary, having different activities around the room is a way to teach it in multiple ways, because not everybody learns it the first time. So this is why we do centers. The big reason why I like doing small group instruction is because I need to read with my kids every day. I need to check their writing. I need to help them. It's kind of like a tutoring, modeling kind of instruction approach. So when I'm reading with a child their Just Right book, I need everybody else to be doing something. And that something is center. So I've planned activities that are happening around the room that I know that they can do with little to no help, that they can collaborate on, so that I can really, really teach each of them at their own time, at their own level. And that's really important to me. So the beginning of the year, you spend some time front loading this, teaching them how it works and the procedures, so that later you have a well-running classroom and you can really teach those kids their guided reading and writing and even math help. I like centers because they work together as a team. When you do things as a whole group, it's focused on you, and it's focused on the teacher being that person who knows. But when you put a group of kids at a center and you have something, they have to rely on each other. They know that they can't interrupt me when I'm reading. That's a no-no. So they have to figure out someone else to ask. They have to solve their own problems. And it fosters independence, which is the next one. I really like them to be able to solve their own problems. It's part of growing up, and it's part of taking responsibility for your own education. So it's a big deal. I like to have activities that are varied and diverse. Not every child learns the same way, and not every child enjoys the same activity. So if you have multiple things going on, everyone is engaged. Differentiation is really big. At our school, we have so many levels in a class. You know, we have kids who are brand new and don't speak any English. I have in my class kids who barely know the alphabet, and kids who are reading at second grade level. And I need to address all their needs. Each one of them is important. But if we're doing stuff together, it's really obvious when somebody has this work and somebody has this work. And it causes a lot of, self-doubt and comparison, which is not good in education. So when I'm reading with each kid individually and I'm creating center activities that are of various difficulties, it's really seamless. Nobody's really recognizing that somebody else is above or below, and we don't pay attention to that, and everyone can have their own dignity and confidence about their learning. So I know you've seen this a million times before, but I really try to think about all the different ways kids learn when I do centers. I don't want to put 4 or 5 activities around the room that are all the same. You know, if I'm putting all word smart activities, like, you know, letters and writing and this and that, then it's all skewed to one direction. So I try to make sure that there's a balance of different things and switch it up. One of the things, I just wanted you to look at this, because I would use this probably not in first grade, more like second, third, fourth, fifth. It's a little comic about what they mean, the learning styles, and on the front is a quiz you would give the students. So you can take the quiz yourself, and it's just kind of getting a sense of what do you like, how do you learn, and then you score yourself, and it's a way to figure out what your learning style is. So I'll give you a few minutes to work on that, and we'll talk about it. And with children who are a little older, you can talk about this, and it gets them to recognize what their strengths are. Maybe their strength isn't reading or math. Maybe their strength is, you know, PE or music or art. And this is kind of giving equal value to all the different gifts that children have, so that they feel like their contribution still means something. So when I took it, I thought, I like to do all of these things. So it was really hard for me to score myself. But kids are a little bit more picky. They will say, no, I don't like that. Was anybody surprised at what came out, or was it what you thought? Yeah. Mine was too. If you teach older children, like high school kids, you can go online and there's a test, and it gives them kind of like a rainbow little dial like that. And the questions are a lot more to the point. There's many more questions, and it'll give you like, you're this much here and this much here and this much here. And it's good for older children to learn as well. But for younger kids, this is enough. And like I said, when I'm planning centers for a week, I will usually, you know, you kind of get in a routine and you kind of start doing some of the same things. And I have to remind myself, okay, we need a little bit more movement, or we need something, you know, a little bit quiet, to give that variety and keep it fresh. So these are some possible language arts centers. These are ones I've used many, many times that can be changed up all the time, like a listening center. So we used to have, when I was first teaching in America, we would have the big cassette player or a CD player and a book, and the kids would sit with the headphones and listen. But now there are different things online you can get, because it's really hard when you're teaching overseas to buy things like 6 books and a CD from the US and the machine that is hard to find. So there's a website called Epic. I don't know if any of you have seen that. And they can listen to stories read. So they are listening. Someone's reading the story and they're seeing it go by. It's like someone telling them a story. The pocket chart I use so much. So I put poems in the pocket chart. I put language experience in the pocket chart. So many different things. And the kids are in charge of interacting with it, either answering questions or constructing and deconstructing it. And they love it, because I introduce the pocket chart as something I teach them with. So when they go to that center, they feel like they're being me, and they like that. The class library, that's just independent reading. When they come to me, we do reading lessons, writing lessons, etc. Journals, making words. They get little tiles or pieces of paper and move the words around and make different words. I usually have an assistant guide that one, so it's a little bit more teacher directed. Read the room. In our room, in a primary room, you're going to have print everywhere. And you're going to have poems and charts, things we've written, things we've read. And they can get a pointer. It's like a little stick. And they go around and they can read the whole room. And it takes them quite a while. And it's a really great activity to practice reading. And they love it. And we also write the room. So they get their little clipboard and their paper. And they go write all the poems. They write the word wall. And they're engaged. And they're doing something that's really good practice for them with their friends. And I'm teaching. Writing, that might be like writing a different kind of story. Maybe it's a holiday and you put special colored paper there. The writing center can always be there, but you can switch it up. Sometimes I put paper with cute little borders because it's a different season. Sometimes I put colored pens, or you can think of different little things you can put there, and it makes it seem new each week, even though it's the same thing. If you are lucky enough to have interactive boards, that's a great center for kids once you show them how to do an activity. And these are some other dice games, roll a word, phonics, art. This is just kind of an example. Usually when I have a room full of elementary teachers, we kind of brainstorm and talk about, how we would use one of these centers with our kids at our level. But I know that we're not all at that level, so I'll spare you that. We use Play-Doh a lot in math and in reading, making words, forming things. Math and science, you can just, whatever you're doing, I usually have the balance and some magnets and things like that, and I switch them out at the table and let the kids explore. And then whatever we're doing for a lesson, like I teach them a game, and then I will leave it out that they can play it on their own time, and that's a good center. Like when we're practicing math, this is one of the centers I've been using a lot. There's so many versions of it. Of course, I'm doing addition. This is called Boo Bump, but the game is Bump. It's just a practice math. So they roll the dice, they add them together, and they put a marker on. And then if somebody else gets the same number, they can bump them. And so they really like kicking their friends off of the thing. But at first I thought, okay, somebody's going to lose it and be really upset. But then they see that it's, everybody has their turn, and they enjoy it. And they also have a multiplication version. So you roll the 2 dice, you multiply them, and then if you land on a 12 and nobody bumps you and you land on a 12 again, then you're going to have 2 markers, like little cubes that snap together. So once you have 2, you're safe. So it doesn't constantly get bumped. You can get safe, and then they're very proud of themselves. And this game can go on for quite a while, and it's really good at, it's just one of those things where they're practicing those skills that they need to have automaticity of in a really fun way. And that's, as soon as I teach something like that and I put it out, it's independent now, it's a center. So there's so many different ways you can manage centers. I remember when I first started teaching kindergarten, the teacher that I shared the room with, because we were AM, PM, she had this really, really intricate system. And of course I copied her system because I was brand new and I didn't know what to do. And we had a chart, like for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and there were shapes, and everybody had a clip. And so each day they would go to a different center, and there was pictures. It was very well planned, but it was very, very regimented. And you can do it that way, and it works. We had 33 kids in a room, so we had to really make sure that we had them all separated, and it worked for us. But I've done it so many different ways now. I usually start the year doing it very regimented because I want them to learn certain core values about how to use the materials, how to get along, how to clean up, how to move from place to place. And once they show me that they can handle it, then I start easing back the regimen. So in the beginning, I have groups, and they go from place to place to place, and I have a timer on the computer, and it beeps, and everybody moves. But I start working, once I see that they're really good at this and they can handle themselves, we start working to a less rigid system. So what I move towards then is I'll have a list of centers for the week. And anyone who's elementary and wants this, I can email this to you and you can edit it yourself. I basically say this week, this is what we're doing. We might have pocket chart, read with a friend. For book box, journals, and reading with me, I want them to do that more than just once a week. So I have 3 boxes, and they know that if they do it on Monday, they get it Tuesday, Friday. So during the week, I want them to do all these jobs. And then there's always something that's just that week, like we made a Thanksgiving book, we wrote about how to make a pumpkin pie. And then once they finish a lot of these, they can, a free choice, it's kind of like a directed free choice. They can't just run around crazy, but they can go and get an activity that maybe I hadn't chosen that week, like the word puzzles or the Play-Doh, whatever. And they really like this because they put this on their clipboard, and they all have a clipboard that they have for the week, and they do their job. And if we have a write the room on here, they'll keep it on their clipboard so they can show me, and then I help them. They usually mark it themselves, or they come and show me, or they show my assistant. And then the next day they take out their clipboard, and then they have to make a choice. Okay, what am I going to do today? Am I going to do a journal? I'm going to do this. And they're directing their choices. They know they have jobs, but they have more autonomy, and they really like that. I've also done it where the choice is more open. So either by the day or by the week, I will provide a list of 5 to 7 activities, and they get to choose when and how they go, as long as they do all of those. And usually, I would say, half to 3/4 of the way through the year, they're capable of making good choices like that. And as soon as I see that they're not making good choices and they're not getting things done, we go back to a little bit more, okay, you're gonna do, and then come see me. So it depends on your class. It depends on who you have and how they operate and how they get along with each other. So, usually I do this workshop in like more than half a day or a whole day, and we make some stuff. So we experiment with some centers. It's usually very grade specific, and we will share some ideas, print things out, laminate them, cut them, take something back to school that you can use the next day. We don't really have the space for that, but we are going to do a hands-on activity in the next section, so that's coming. This is one of my students at a center. We have bears, and we're using non-standard units to measure. So they take different materials from around the class, or we had a little book, they had to find things, and then they have to count how many bears does that weigh. And they do that either individually or in groups, and they write it down on their little book, and they take it home, and it's a lot of fun for them. So this is kind of some schools are, really advanced in this. They do this all the time, and some are just starting out. And it kind of depends on who's at your school, what you're used to, and what resources you have. So this is kind of a chance to talk about do you feel supported in using centers at your school? Do you need more help? Are there obstacles? And how can we make it better? Like I said, I don't know you and what you're doing, but if we were a larger group of primary teachers, we would kind of troubleshoot this. I know sometimes space is limited. I know sometimes materials are limited. When I first showed up in Clark, I didn't have pattern blocks or Unifix cubes or a lot of stuff that I need. And I kind of panicked for a minute, and then I went back to my early days of teaching when I did Math Their Way. And I wrote a note, and I said, I want you to bring in rocks, shells, bottle caps. Trying to think of what else. There's a bunch of things. We would collect like these peach pits and cherry pits, acorns, pine cones, like whatever's local that you have, and they would bring all these things in, and then we would talk about them, and we would sort them, and we would put them all in a box and label them, so that when we did math activities, we could use them. Usually in kindergarten, you're sorting, you're classifying, you're counting, but in first grade, we would add them, mix them together, take them apart, and I got through a year with junk, and it's called junk boxes. They would bring in old keys. They love the key box. So you just say, do you have any old keys? Bring them in. And then you have like 20, 30 keys in a box, and they're all different. And it's a really great way to use them for patterning and adding and subtracting. And no, it takes a little bit more time. It's not easy. But if you don't have all of that fancy stuff from the store, you can make it happen. Did anybody want to share or talk about any of this?
One
Yes.
question I would have is, if you've got big gaps in ability, and you've got kids who can't speak English that well, or maybe can't read, so they can't read written instructions, for example,
Mm-hmm.
how do you avoid a situation where you're always helping that group of kids, and you've got the other group of kids you're not seeing them anywhere near as much because you're always focused on the kids who need that guidance?
Yeah, that's why I do centers. And when I meet with them, the really important thing that I learned years ago is I can't take that kid who isn't reading and doesn't know English and give them grade level curriculum because they can't do it. And what are they going to do? They're going to cry, or they're going to hate school, or they're going to hate me. So what I need to do is give them something they can do today to bridge the gap and bring them up to where they need to be. So when those kids come to me, we do reading A to Z. Does anybody have that? Yeah. So I'll have an AA book with them, or we'll do a game with words. We'll do Play-Doh word mats. Last year I had a group who didn't know the alphabet, and I did alphabet books with them. So we constructed our own alphabet books. Each page had a letter, and then we found pictures and we put them in, and so they would read like A, apple. B, bear. And each day we would put a couple more letters in, the ones they knew, until they had the whole thing. And by the time we finished the book, they knew the alphabet. And then we started putting words together, and then. And those kids were really struggling, and they didn't know how to read. And they were in my class last year. A couple of them have come back to me this year because we switched classes around, and they're now reading at first grade level. Now, they're in second grade, but they're not so low anymore. Like I've been able to bridge them up. And so, yeah, we're still trying to close the gap, but they feel successful. And so, yes, you're going to have all these different activities that kids can engage in. And when they come to you, you're doing that thing with them. And then the kids who are really high, I also have kids reading at second grade level, and she's reading level K. And that's what I read with her. So what I read with each child can be very different because I'm not teaching everybody the same thing at the same time. It just doesn't work, especially for diverse populations. So if you have everybody really engaged doing great things and practicing and doing centers, then you can teach each person what they can do and make them feel like they're successful. Yes?
In terms of grouping your students when you do this, do you find more success with grouping by level or having like mixed level?
That's why I don't really like this as much, because with this I do have to group by level, and so they're kind of moving with their level. So I try to keep this to a couple weeks as long as I need to do it, and then when I have them going off making their own choices, then I can say, okay, you and you come read with me. But while they're at the centers, they're mixing with everybody at different levels. And yeah, some kids are higher and lower, they're helping each other, they're interacting, and it's more heterogeneous. But I just pull the group I need. And I don't name the groups. I don't say your group's 1, 2, 3, or whatever. I just call them because my groups are really fluid and flexible. As a kid moves up, they may need to read with another group. If a kid's still kind of at this place and they need to work there some more, they're not going to move, and it's going to go up and down. Also, because our classes are so low, I would say I more often pull a group, have them all reading, and I listen to each one individually read because I really want to hear what they're doing. And I feel like they get more out of it when they really feel like they have my full attention. So yeah, I like them to interact more diversely. So I do that until I get everything solid, and then we go with more autonomy. And yeah, you have to trust them a little bit. It's scary. Okay, did anybody else have a question? I didn't mean to do that. Okay, we are going to do some interactive stuff. We had to really make some hard choices because of time. But in the STEAM section, we are going to get some stuff in your hands, and you're going to be really making something. So we just wanted you to have a chance to kind of stretch, talk, go to the bathroom, get a drink, and then we're going to move things around and do a project. Okay, thanks.
So we'd like to continue with our presentation. We want to put you guys in groups. So we'll make 4 groups. So first we'll do, this is STEAM, it's STEM, but with an A. The A is for art. I think everybody already knows this. And we do have a little art thing that we added into this. And STEM is pretty much a project that you can do with your students in class. And hopefully it has, it's solution-based or problem-based. And it's connected to something like real, so that that it's connected to something that kids can actually relate to, or it's something that's happening now, or it's a current event. So our little perspective, this is actually made for kids that are probably up to middle school. I guess you could enhance it for high school too. So what makes its theme? Autonomy, constructivism, 21st century skills, and explicit instruction. So autonomy, pretty much self-explanatory. Kids do it by themselves. Constructivism, that is based on Piaget's theory, right? Explicit instruction, that's actually showing them. And then 21st century skill building, that is things like teamwork and communication and probably technology too. So let's do some STEAM. This project that we made for you guys is, this is the problem. You all work as engineers. And the king of Saudi Arabia is angry. He wants to build a tower bigger, taller than the UAE's Burj Khalifa. And he's got the money to do it. So your boss has come to you and said, I got to get this contract. You guys need to get this contract. So your engineers working for top construction companies, budget is set, which is, here's your budget right here. Okay, don't go over budget. And build the tallest tower you can. And also, because we had to add some art, you're going to have to create a poster to sell it too. So it's not only about numbers, right? To advertise your new building to the king. 30 minutes should be enough, because we're all advanced here. Okay. Huh? So that's it. Okay, so let's begin. So we can put you in groups of 4 groups. You could just turn around. You can make groups yourself, or we can put you in groups.
We're the bigger
I like that.
That's good.
Right, we need a base.
Oh. Is that, should it be like a right angle, do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good. No, she's right though. Homegirl over here is correct.
Okay.
Number that we have
Can I cut this or what? What do you think?
cut in half is what I
Half,
used.
that's half.
What's the name that you have?
What if everybody's finished?
Should we start looking at our building? Yeah, let's measure it now, yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna fall over.
like with like a poison cloud.
It's very pretty.
Tiene que
Which one do you want that one measured?
The tallest one.
That's okay, we're done. We're done.
It gets down here. On the bottom. This is part of our foundation.
All that matters.
So actually, we gotta measure
Okay,
all the way to the ground.
About 65.
So beautiful.
You're not in it, like.
It's okay.
Unfortunately, our design team was not able to bring the model with us.
Oh, okay.
But we have the perfect replica on our poster here. We have calling it a generous portion of triangles because triangles are the perfect shape. And we little shout out to your kingdom here with the flag.
Your kingdom.
And the name of your building. The perfect pronunciation in Arabic for triangles. One more time? Oh, sorry. That is correct, yes?
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Our patent pending pillow stable tech design will ensure that listen.
Ours isn't pending.
A patent pending pillow stable tech design is sure to ensure the stability of your building against any desert sand storms. And we look forward to winning your support. Listen, Tesla, if you want to see credit.
That's why we call this Big Berthka. Big Berthka is freestanding at the moment. I'm not sure for how much longer. And look at that poster, ladies and gentlemen.
Look at your neighboring kingdom's tower compared to
It's got nothing on it.
Not to scale.
It is the scale.
Look how many zeros are in that number. I mean, just look at the zeros. That's not patent pending, it's our design. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Your Majesty. We've seen the other designs, and we just don't think that they bring what you're looking for. You're looking for something, again, of course, that's majestic, like your kingdom, something that's beautiful, that will catch everyone's eye, something that people are going to come from all around the world to see, and that is the Sapphire Tower, the world's crown.
We've made the bigger Burj Khalifa. And as you can see, this is your Highness's royal treasury, going all the way to infinity. And the tiny UAE's ill-gotten gains at the bottom. They clearly cannot afford our structure, which you can see because it is the tallest in the world and is still standing. Clearly, we've won.
Aside from, you know, the construction part and the engineering part, which you should actually pre-teach some fundamentals about engineering.
No, we don't.
We can all, I would say that, yes, clearly, the objective was build the tallest tower you can, but then some were better at the art part, some were better at the engineering part, and the point of this is everybody gets to show off their skills, and maybe you even looked at this and said, you know, maybe I do like to draw and color, and you were the one doing that for your poster. But in the classroom, kids, the 21st century skills are coming up here and, you know, talking or actually teamwork, you know, good communication skills. Some of you might have been really good, had the idea in your head, and probably couldn't communicate it and had to sit back. I don't know, all these things are really important when doing this. So here's the STEAM. Science, students, and this is kind of like before when you're building your lesson or your objective, you can use the STEAM. Science, students will use skills in the scientific method. Da, 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 da. Technology, you can do this any way you want. Use the digital camera. It can be using, you know, Web 2.0 tools or the internet. Engineering, that's the part, you know, construction. Art, that's the poster. It could also be something else. You could actually write about it if you want. And the math, geometric shapes. So you can also integrate this, as we said, with other standards. So these are standards like from grades 3, 2, and 5. Again, is there anybody else from elementary in here at all? Okay, cool. Okay. So it's really easy to integrate all this stuff, and you can drag these out to do 2 or 3 day projects if you want. Have kids research skyscrapers together in a group. Come and present it, you know, make a poster about skyscrapers. Read and discuss stories about architecture. All of these things just enhance the learning, and it's not just a one-off activity. You can actually do a whole unit on it. And hit your standards too. So we do have some questions if you guys want to reflect together. Raise your hand if you had like a head engineer. That would be somebody who had the idea and was kind of guiding the whole thing. You had 2 head engineers, so that's good. And then that reflects real life, right? That's it. Can anybody say, how did you use the prompt, which was, where was the prompt? You know, King of Saudi Arabia, here it is. How did this help you and your poster? Yes?
I'm a bit of a loophole finder in my personal and professional life, so reading this, I read it over and over and think, what is it telling me I can't do?
Right.
And it tells me a lot of what I can do, but it didn't tell me a lot of things I can't do. And I like that freedom, so that's the bag.
The bag.
The markers.
There is.
Well, in our country, it's already filled.
There's going to be legal issues here. So yeah, that does allow for the creativity, and it does. And as you can notice, like I'm watching the room, and I see you guys having a lot of fun. And this happens in the classroom, having a lot of fun, hands-on, especially in elementary. They don't want to just sit there. They want to do things. And then afterwards, during the presentation, the room lit up. You know, people were laughing and everybody. So I saw that as a really great part of it too. So how did social skills play a role in the process? You have to, right? And maybe in a younger group, in elementary, some kids are, they're so shy, but they have got these great ideas, and it could be during this round of project work in a group, they're like, oh man, I wish I said that, or God, I had this really great idea, but I couldn't say it. And then they're watching somebody else in the group communicate their ideas, and they're learning in that way too. So learning by watching, by observation. Did anybody have a point where it was like, oh my God, oh no, it just fell apart, or it seemed like things were breaking down? Did anybody have that? Yeah. Real life, there you go. And this is just for you guys to reflect. How would you adapt this for your own students, this activity? I guess most of you are in high school, so it would have to be a little bit more complex.
I think it would be interesting to have the students design more than one tower, or before building their tower, actually strength test different geometric shapes, triangles and curves and squares, and kind of see where they're going to get the best strength from different
Prototyping
shapes.
and
Very, yeah.
And also, if you wanted to make this in secondary, like a bigger scale project, you have access to a fabrication lab that can 3D print this and like really get into more like
Wow, next level. So a big step up from elementary are popsicle sticks and blue tack. Okay, so that was STEAM. If anybody, that was it actually, we're done, yeah. So thank you very much, thanks.